Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John McEwen. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Theater Alliance, and I will give you a brief visual description of myself, and then I will also have my colleagues introduce themselves. So I am a cis white male in my early 60s. I have brown and gray hair parted on the side with a mustache and goatee. I have glasses with clear eye frames and bright blue leg frames. And today I'm wearing a white polo shirt and I have a blurred background. And I'm coming to you today from Asbury Park, land of the Lenape, Lenny Lenape. And I'm delighted to say hello to Kat Lilly. Hi, Kat.
Hi, I'm Kat Lilly. I'm the Access Coordinator with the New Jersey Theater Alliance. I am a white woman in my early 40s. I've got long brown hair pulled to one side and braided. And today I'm wearing my blue, slightly cat-eyed glasses. And I have a blurred background, and I am coming to you from Medford, New Jersey, land of the Lenape. And I am someone with a non-apparent disability. And I will pass it over to Diane.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, I guess. I'm Diane Feldman. I am a white woman in my mid-60s. I have brown hair just below my ears. I am wearing a light blue patterned shirt, and I'm coming to you from my home in Highland Park. That's Highland Park with an H-I-G-H, not an I-S for those of you down the shore. I became involved with the Cultural Access Network project 8 years ago. I use a power wheelchair, and I first became involved about wheelchair accessibility. But what I've learned over the years is that access to the arts for people with all kinds of disabilities involves so much more than just getting in the door. So I'm happy to share what I have learned from them.
Great. Well, so great to be with you all, and we thank everyone over at Mercer County Cultural and Heritage for hosting us. As you know, this is an access awareness training session today. And just to give you a little bit of background, the Cultural Access Network is a project of the New Jersey Theater Alliance in partnership with our New Jersey State Council on the Arts. The New Jersey Theater Alliance is a service organization that provides a wide range of services for the professional theaters in our state, which there are 42. But our equity and our access work benefits not just theaters, but it benefits the entire state's cultural community. And that's our Cultural Access Network, as well as our Creating Change Network, which provides resources and education for equity. For this state's arts community. So we're here, of course, as part of our Cultural Access Network project. And Diane is part of an 18-member volunteer steering committee of the Cultural Access Network that provides incredible guidance to Kat and I as we develop a wide range of education programming for the state's arts community around accessibility. So with that, we're going to just jump right into our presentation. You can certainly leave comments and questions into the chat, and I believe Kat will monitor the chat. So please do that as we go along. And I'll stop also periodically just to do a check-in to see if you have any thoughts or questions that you would like to share. So next slide, please. So we've just done some welcome and introductions. We just want to always make sure that wherever you are, that just doing an access check that you can fully participate in today's session. So hopefully your internet is working, you've got water by your side, whatever you need to fully participate in today's session. Quickly to just share with you, we're going to share a few community agreements in a moment. We always like to talk about the constituency that we're all looking to serve because it's important to know information around the individuals in the community that you're looking to serve so that you have that background to as you make your plans around access. We'll discuss the importance of language, the importance of accessibility being really an important part of your organization in how you include accessibility. It's not just one person's responsibility, it's an organizational responsibility. The importance of assessing, because if you're going to plan for access, you need to do a little bit of assessment, kind of to know where you are, to know where you're going. We'll, of course, go over programs and marketing around accessibility, why planning is important, and we have a wide range of resources that we're going to be leaving with you. And we'll certainly take questions towards the end, but we'll also, as I said, stop periodically to do a check-in with all of you for any questions or thoughts you want to share. So in terms of our community agreements, we encourage everyone to please participate. If you have a thought that you want to share and it may not be fully formed, you're kind of working it out a little bit in your head, we refer to that as rough draft. You're still kind of giving the thought some, it's not fully baked yet.
Okay.
Please don't hold back. You know, it's okay to speak in rough draft. Sometimes individuals share stories to make a point. So we just want to make sure that some things might be shared that are confidential. So we just want to all agree that whatever is said here stays here, but whatever we learn together leaves here. We're going to hold ourselves accountable for our words and our actions as we participate today. We're going to know when to come forward and pull back, because sometimes some individuals are a little bit more comfortable coming forward than others. So we just want to make sure that we have equal space for everyone. And of course, everybody's experiences are valid. Everybody has a different point of view. So whenever anyone shares or makes a comment, we want to just value multiple truths. And so I just want to do a check-in with all of you that we all feel comfortable with the community agreements for today's work. Does everybody feel comfortable? I can't see you all, so I'm assuming you're all showing thumbs or nodding and that you're all good. So if for some reason you have a question on the community agreements, you can always drop them in the chat. So we know that the word equality and equity, they're used a lot, right? They're kind of thrown around a lot, and a lot of people, I think, use them interchangeably, but they are very, very different. And if you take a look at the graphic on your screen, the first example is around equality. So they all, as you see there, they all got the same bicycle to go on the bike ride. So that is equality. They all got the same bike. However, that bike is not necessarily quite right for everyone. It might be right for one person, but it's not right for all the others. It's too big, for example. Or, as you can see here, there is a wheelchair user, and that bike isn't going to work at all. But we all want to strive for equity. And the graphic, below, is a perfect example of equity. They all have some sort of a bike, but the bike, the mobility device that they're using there, is designed to meet their individual needs. And so that is equity. And when we think about access, we want to strive towards equity, understanding that there are different needs for different individuals in order for them to fully participate in the activity. In this case, it's a bike ride. In all of our cases, it's fully engaging in arts and culture. So that's what we want to strive for is equity. So I'd like to ask Diane and Kat, I just love this graphic. I think it's such a good one, but any thoughts you want to share about the graphic?
Yeah, I just want to throw out something else in the equity because I am a quadriplegic. I don't have any use of my hands. So a hand bike wouldn't do me any good. So my version of equity
Mhm.
is a tandem bike that I have where I sit in the front part, which is a wheelchair, but it connects to the back of a tandem bicycle, and my husband does all the work to take us wherever we want to go on a bike ride, and I am the bug shield.
But that's a perfect example. So here, all of the bikes that are here in this equity graph for Diane, you need in order to go on the bike ride, you need yet something different. Kat, anything did you want to share anything on the graphic?
I know I didn't have anything to add on
No?
this one.
All right.
Mhm.
So it's important to talk about disability and the community that we're all looking to serve. So approximately 61 million Americans, that's 27% of our population, or 1 in 4, have a disability in our country. And that is individuals that actually self-identify and report that they have a disability. So our guess is that this number is even larger because there's many people who have a disability but they don't report it. So if you think about it, that's a large number of Americans that have a disability. So we want to make sure, again, that everybody, right? We want everybody to have access to arts and culture. And according to the US Census Bureau, in 2030, they expect that people 65 years or older are going to outnumber children. And so, with this growing elderly population, more than likely, disabilities will more than likely increase in our country. More accommodations are going to be requested. So, we have to keep that in mind that this number is going to grow.
My
The
God.
unemployment rate of disabled people is approximately 71% of people with disabilities are unemployed versus non-disabled people. 71% of the non-disabled population is employed. So you see there's a big difference. So again, important to know that the community that we're looking to serve, many of them are unemployed. And that's important to keep in mind when we're thinking about pricing and other um, policies where we want to ensure that we're engaging and breaking down barriers to those with disabilities to fully participate. Diane, did you have something here you wanted to share?
No.
No? Okay. And disability is the most unrepresented community in arts and entertainment. We probably all know how many films and theater pieces we've seen where the character is disabled, but it's being played by a non-disabled actor. And so we've made some strides in this area, but not as much as we would like to. So, and right now they're saying 95% of those characters are being played by non-disabled actors. And disability is the only category of diversity that anyone can join at any time, and more than likely, we all will at some point. So that is also very important to keep in the back of our minds. So having this background is really important just to give us a sense of the community that we're looking to serve.
John,
Yeah.
I'd go back to that slide.
Mm-hmm.
I met someone at the beginning of the month who told me that she had broken both her legs at one point, and so she ended up using a wheelchair for some long period of time. I don't remember. And so she felt that she had empathy with people who used wheelchairs. But as we talked and she heard some of my experiences, because I've used a wheelchair for over 25 years, she said, wow, I never thought of that. And I never thought. And so I think that we each, to say you get to this late, but to say that one disabled person is like another disabled person is not true.
That is so, so true. And also keeping in
Mhm.
mind that you can also have a temporary disability.
Yes.
So that, and many, many, many of us have experienced that. So again, important that it could be that any one of us at any time can be disabled, whether it's temporary, whether it's permanent or not. So important. And so important that just because a person has a disability doesn't mean the next person who has a disability is the same, right? We're talking about individuals, right? Which we'll get to that in a little bit too. So this just shows you for New Jersey, again, by the numbers of individuals that report that they have a disability. So in Mercer County, it says here that, let's find Mercer. So Mercer has anywhere between 9 and 10.5% of the population in Mercer County is reporting that they have a disability. So that's a large number of people in your community, right? So just to kind of to keep that in mind, that again, a large number of the Mercer County, roughly 10% of your county has a disability. So you want to ensure that the arts and culture that all of you are offering is available to the largest number of people in your region. And then on the next slide, this is basically the same status. It just shows you the graph a little bit differently, but it also shows you that nationally in the United States, it's about 13.5% of our country are individuals that are reporting that they have a disability. Again, a very large number. And in New Jersey, it's roughly 11% of our state. A state of what? We're a little over, 8.5 million people in New Jersey. So that's, again, quite a large number of people in our state. And then again, you'll see on this graph where Mercer County lands.
And again, it's important to remember that these are just the people who report that they have a disability. There are many people that don't report that will also benefit from having accommodations and services available.
Mm-hmm. All right. So just understanding different perceptions around disability. So for years, there was a long time, and my guess is it's still in existence a bit today, but there was this perception that professionals are in charge, meaning the doctor is in charge or the teacher, that the individual needs to make adjustments. There's something wrong with the individual. They need to adapt to what society presents itself. That that the individual with the disability isn't necessarily able to make their own decisions, that their parent or their teacher or their doctor knows better. And that, again, that these other individuals, they're the ones with the expertise, not the individual with the disability. So again, there are, and hopefully that has drastically reduced, but there were a lot of perceptions around disabilities in with this sort of mindset. So to keep that in mind, that we want to move away from these perceptions and think about, and I don't know, Diane, before we move away from these perceptions, anything you want to share here? Because I'm sure you even experienced some of these perceptions today yourself, yes?
Oh, you're muted,
You're
Diane.
muted.
Diane, you're still muted. Let's see if I can.
There you go.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Driver error. Yes, I think that as someone with very visible disabilities, a lot of time people think that they understand what I need and don't ask. And it's very true that the people with the disabilities are their own experts in what kinds of assistance, lack of assistance, accommodations they need. And this is a constant source of discussion for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for me, coming from my side as someone with a non-apparent disability, sometimes if I am asking for a certain accommodation, one of the things I have problems with is standing for long periods of time. And so if I'm standing in a long line for something, I may need a place to sit and things like that. But sometimes I often get met with, well, you look able-bodied, you look like you're fine. Why do you need an accommodation? If I am telling you that I need something, it's because these are my lived experiences, and that is because this is what I need. And so I do get questioned a lot on it. Sometimes I get eye rolls and things like that. So just, be kind to people and make sure that you are listening to them and their experiences.
And also back to what Diane said earlier, that every individual is different. So just because two individuals have a disability doesn't mean that their needs are exactly the same, right? So we want to move away from these perceptions. And if we look at the next slide, you want to, work from the point of view that it is the individual that's in charge, right? We're all in charge of our own lives. We're capable of making our own decisions. That actually society does need to make some adjustments and accommodations in order for all individuals of all types of needs and abilities can participate equally in society. The expertise actually relies on the individual who happens to be disabled. They know what's best. They can speak from their own personal experience and what their needs are, not the so-called person in charge, whoever that might be. So this is the perception that we want to all work from here. So before I'm just going to do a little stop here because there's a lot of information right up front before we go into language. Is there any questions or comments anybody has? before we go further? Kat, are you seeing anything in the chat?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
I'd like to say something.
Sure, yes.
Hi, I'm Leslie. I wear hearing aids. I am hearing impaired, and I actually didn't take. I started this as this training as kind of an obligation, but it's it's very helpful to me to understand certain things. And one of the things, I'm a teacher, and
Mm,
so I work with students who can't, young people who don't necessarily know how to communicate their needs. And so
mhm.
what I try to do in a classroom is work to the best of my ability to make sure that everybody's needs are met, so that I project my voice so that the people who cannot hear um, can understand, or I make sure that things are visual for kids who don't have glasses yet, like things that I'm trying to anticipate. But when there are things that are put in place and people decide not to use them, it's extremely frustrating. So you can
Mhm.
go into a place and someone will say, I'm not going to use the microphone. I'm loud enough. You guys can hear me in the back, right? And you don't want to be that person, but I always am, that says, no, you need to use the microphone.
Right.
No, you need to have a visual display. I know it's more work, but yes, you still do. And
Mhm.
it's more, I think these things are more about educating the public than it is helping the disabled. You know, people should be
Right. No, that's very true.
along in the world without having to constantly explain or be treated rudely. You know, people think I'm ignoring them, or if I ask you more than twice to repeat yourself, then I get an attitude. And I always wondered, like, I mean, I can be pretty feisty because I come from a part of town where, you know, you disrespect me, we're gonna come right back at you. But
Mhm.
like, that's a lot to have to carry, and all I'm doing is asking you what you're saying. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Like,
Right.
so it's more about educating people when you have a large group, letting everybody know without having to point out, oh, Leslie can't hear you, so you need to speak louder. I absolutely hate that.
Right. Yep. Yep. You're so right, Leslie, about so much of it is about education and building awareness because people, they come from a point of they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So, and not to make assumptions of somebody. So you can't make an assumption that you don't need to use the microphone. You're making an assumption that that's okay for everyone when it may not be. So you're so right, which is why we do so many of these access awareness trainings, because we really want to make sure that our cultural community is educated and aware. Because sometimes if you don't really think about it until it's presented to you, sometimes people are making, make mistakes when it's not intentional, it's just from a lack of understanding. So those are really, really good points, is educating, um, building that awareness is so essential. Because you're right, all this training, this is really for not that those individuals with disabilities, it's for everybody else, right? So, but language is so important. Because if you think about it, a lot of language was coined and developed by non-disabled people. And again, to keep in mind, we've said this before, that disability, it is definitely more than just a diagnosis. It's a lived experience. It's a rich and vibrant culture. It's diverse and intersectional. Just because somebody has a disability, that's just one element of that individual. We all are made up of a wide range of diverse skills and backgrounds. Somebody with a disability, that's just one piece of the individual. It's not the whole individual. And again, it's really important for us to keep things in mind that it's a community that any one of us can join at any time.
John, we did have a question in
Yep.
the chat.
Okay.
Isaac wanted to know if we were going to cover anything related to mental health disability.
We talk a little bit about cognitive, how you can make some of your programming available to individuals with cognitive disabilities, but we don't have a whole section on mental health. No.
We do have roundtables on our website. I can link in the chat. We have a lot of archived roundtables, and our roundtables are really great for different deep dives on like specific topics. And so I can link that for you in just a moment.
And we won't go through all of these terms, but there are certain words that we want to stay away from. And we want to think, for example, it's not the disabled or and certainly want to definitely stay away from the word handicapped. That is not an appropriate word to ever use. You might still see it a little bit as it relates to some government signage, like handicapped parking is probably the one that most of us are familiar with. But when you speak about individuals, you can use people first language. You'll never go wrong. It's people with disabilities, a person with a disability. You don't want to just, because when you say the disabled, then you're just kind of lumping everybody into this one group and you're just identifying them by just a disability. The word impaired, you might hear visually impaired or hearing impaired. Several individuals find the word impaired kind of negative, so they might prefer individuals who are blind or low vision, individuals who have hearing loss versus impaired. And then there are individuals who are deaf, and those individuals typically might communicate through American Sign Language. So again, keeping in mind some of the negative connotation that are out there, we want to stay away from. And that's important when you're communicating verbally with somebody. But if you're going to write about accessibility in a press release or a grant application, language is just as important there as well. And Diane, I know still to this day, it's hard to believe that around individuals who do use wheelchairs, there's still a lot of negative terms that are still that people still come up with. Is that right?
Yeah, one of the ways I like to put some context on it is I'm not in a wheelchair. I remember telling someone who was dreading needing a wheelchair in the future, I said, don't dread it, it will give you independence. And I don't like to say I'm in a wheelchair. I use a wheelchair. The analogy is that I would use a cane, I would wear hearing aids, or I'm in a library, in the hospital, in the bookstore, that those are physical locations, not a description of how I got there or how I get around. And so I think if you approach it as an active verb that describes whatever assistive technology you use, I think that's going to steer you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So language is just important. Do you want to we want to always communicate with people with dignity and respect. So you want to always keep that in mind. And some people might just say, in the future, I'd like to be referred to as. And then you just respect that. And then in the future, that's how you'll refer to them. Some individuals look at language a little differently, but I think what every individual with a disability can agree upon is that they don't want to be identified just by their disability. And they really, some of the words that have this negative connotation, they would like you to drop that. So, and I know, Kat, I know you have some experiences around language yourself, yes?
Yes. So if you'll notice, I say that I am someone with a non-apparent disability. I don't say invisible disability, because there's really been a big movement within the non-apparent disability community to sort of rephrase it, because the word invisible can often, as related to having a disability that can't be seen, it can often make the person themselves feel invisible. I know lots of times, because you can't see my disability all of the time. Sometimes it's a little more noticeable than others, but it just, we can already often feel not seen. We feel not seen by people, doctors, all of that. And so just saying non-apparent disability versus invisible disability, there's been a big movement for that. And I think that's an example of how language changes and evolves over time, because this language is going to keep changing and evolving. And so really what you can do is just keep educating yourself all of the time by doing things like this training, and also just making an effort to kind of keep up with those changes, reaching out, just asking people, talking to people, because people are very forthcoming with information. We want to help. If somebody talks to me and they say oh, invisible disability, I'm just going to take it as a moment to educate. This is what I prefer to call it. I prefer to say non-apparent. So
Right. Yeah, it is. You're right. It's a very good opportunity to educate somebody. Great. And when you think about accessibility, you're all here today representing your organization. I know many of your organizations are strictly run by volunteers. You have small staff, but you still have a group within your organization. And to just keep in mind that this isn't just one person's responsibility. Access really needs to be a priority of your entire organization, from your board of directors. That's where policies are developed and voted upon. That's where financial budgets are presented and voted upon. So that's the leadership of your organization. So you want to make sure that the leadership of your organization is committed to ensuring that your organization is moving on a path to be towards accessibility. Anybody on the artistic side of your organization, anyone that does programming, all the management pieces of your organization, certainly marketing, where you're getting the word out about your programming and what your organization offers. Anybody who's working at your organization that's helping you raise money. There are a lot of things around accessibility that's limited to no financial cost, but there are some things that do require a financial commitment. So development is definitely something that would be touched by accessibility. And then, of course, anyone that interacts with the public. So if you have a box office, if you have an information desk, docents, anyone that's working in the front of your organization that's interacting with the public, most definitely this impacts them. And then some organizations even have a security division where there's a security guard there. Again, the security guard there is there for making sure that the building is protected, that there's safety among visitors at your organization. So again, it even impacts security if you have any security at your organization. So really keep in mind that there's usually one person that kind of keeps the access front and center at an organization. but it doesn't mean that that individual does everything. It really is a group effort and a group commitment. Again, I'm just going to do a quick check-in. Any questions or comments before we move into assessment? Okay. So if you're going to think about, and also it's important to keep in mind that accessibility and becoming accessible, it's a journey. It's not something that happens overnight, right? It's not a checklist where you just check it all off and you're done. You're always going to learn. You're always moving forward. Things take time. But the important thing is that you're creating yourself some kind of plan to continue to move accessibility forward at your organization. And a good place to start is just to assess your building, or maybe you tour, maybe you don't have your own space, but you provide programming in another space. You should always know the features of a building, even if it's not your own. If you are doing any programming there, you want to know what accessible features that building has. What other accommodations and services does that building offer? Like a listening enhancement device, which a lot of venues offer. If you're going to a venue and performing or presenting any kind of a program, you want to know all the various access features there. You want to think about marketing. Think about your website. How accessible is it? Is it easy to navigate? Is it clear contrast? All of those things are really important to do some assessment. And then you'll say, oh, these are some things that are accessible. And then these are some things in these various areas that we need to work on. And then you can kind of set up a plan for yourself to move forward in terms of making things more accessible. We do have a self-assessment survey on our website. It is quite large, but it's a good document for you all to kind of go through. You certainly want to do it with another person or persons at your organization. It's not something we recommend that one person does on their own. And also you want to do it in sections, like, okay, for the next couple of months, we're going to look at the policy section or the programming section, and do it sort of in pieces. And that self-assessment survey it provides some good education and guidance as it asks these various questions in different categories. So you can find that on our website. So there are some things that are readily achievable that you can do in maybe 6 to 8 months, right? And the first thing to do is making sure that you do have an ADA point person, an ADA coordinator at your organization, somebody who is going to kind of move the ball forward around accessibility. It doesn't mean they do everything, but they are sort of the point person to make sure that this is front and center at your organization. And then you want to have a few policies at your organization. One is a non-discrimination policy. It could be something very simple as ABC organization is dedicated to ensuring that everyone can participate in our programming with dignity and independence, or everyone has equal access to participation in all of our programs and services. Something along those lines that says you're making a commitment that anyone who wants to participate in your programming, you're going to do whatever you can to ensure that they have access to participate. And you can put that statement on your website, in your press releases. That tells the public that if they need something, if they need to make a request for an accommodation, your policy statement is telling them that you're going to work with them, that you're going to do whatever you can to make their request, to meet their request. Now, some services might require that you contract somebody, like a sign interpreter, or maybe you want to do open captioning for those with hearing loss. In that case, you do actually have to hire somebody. And so you want a little advance notice if somebody wants one of those services. So if you have an advance notification policy, we recommend 2 weeks. So if you have a particular accommodation request, please let us know by calling such and such a number. So be as specific as you can with the contact information at least 2 weeks before your scheduled visit. So this way, if somebody wants a sign interpreter or they have another request, they're giving you ample notice to make that request, and you now have the time to meet the request. Now, if somebody calls you a week before or a few days before, you still want to do whatever you can to meet the request. But that 2-week notice does sort of give the public a guide and somewhat protects you a little bit in the event that you cannot meet their request. But 2 weeks, you should be able to meet somebody's request in 2 weeks. And your grievance procedure, in the event that a patron makes a complaint and feels that an accommodation was not met, what's the process you're going to take to satisfy that grievance? Now, hopefully you'll take care of it right on the spot. It might be something very simple to do and make an adjustment right then and there. But in some cases, it might require further investigation, further discussion. So what are the steps you're going to take the grievance, to discuss a solution, and then get back to the patron? And we have sample grievance procedures on the website as well.
I just want to answer a couple of questions from
Sure.
the chat from Isaac. Again, John just said that we do have those sample grievance procedures. We also have a sample non-discrimination policy, which is what you were specifically asking about. It is also in that resources part of our website that I linked. And for the roundtables, you will not currently see any upcoming events. The link that I provided is to the archives for the 2024 or for the 2025 and earlier roundtables. Our roundtables will start up again in the fall. We have not yet decided on topics for those. So if there's any topics that you specifically want to see, you can feel free to reach out to me because I keep a running list of those. And December is when we will have our first roundtable of the 2025-2026 year.
Great. And it's,
John,
yes.
I know you're partway through this,
Yeah.
but I just want to comment to everyone. Between the previous slide and this slide, if you're a very small organization with only volunteers, you may look at this list and say, wow, there's a lot of work here. I don't see how on earth we're going to be able to do all of this. Two things are, you know your organization best. And after what you hear today, you may now have some ideas about where you want to start devoting some resources. And if you need some help trying to prioritize, you can reach out to us and ask questions about, I've got these 3 big things, but there's no way I can tackle any more than one of these. Where do you think I should start? So just realize you're not alone.
So good. And keeping in mind that you do things in small pieces, take something a step at a time. Don't feel you have to do everything all at once. It's, as I said earlier, it's definitely a journey. Another thing to give some thoughts about in terms of policy is just around budgeting. Like in your operating budget, when you're working on your budget, you might want to put, $500 aside or $250, something for access in the event something comes up, or you would like as an organization to do something around accessibility. You were proactive and built it into your budget early on versus being reactive. And then some organizations, there's programming, they might do some kind of an outreach program. And then within that program budget, they put an accessibility line item. Like they're going to have it open captioned, for example. So they're going to put resources aside for that. And if you need any help with regards to resources, that's like a whole nother workshop that we could that we could do. But as Diane said, you can always reach out to any one of us. More than happy to give you guidance on what certain things might cost. So always don't hesitate to do that. Establishing or sharing an advisory board. So much like I shared with you, we have our Creating Our Cultural Access Network Steering Committee. That's like our advisory board. They guide us, they help us think about policy, they spread the word about the work that our Cultural Access Network does. They come up with great resources to help move us forward in access. Same thing for your organization, to give some thought to, it could be a handful of people, 3, 4, 5. You might even want to share an advisory board with a couple of other organizations in your local area, so you're not always going after the same people. And they can be wonderful resources for you as you move forward in developing your access plans. They also can be very helpful in providing awareness training, much like we're doing today. You might want to do a training for all of your volunteers. You might be the only one here today representing your organization, but you might want to have an awareness training for all of your volunteers. Well, advisory board members can be very helpful in being that resource. You also want to reach out to the Mercer County office that serves people with disabilities and make sure that you have a relationship with them. They are also very good resources for education. They're also good resources to maybe identify an individual that might serve on your advisory board. So make sure that you do have a relationship with your county office that serves people with disabilities. And also think about the access symbols. They're downloadable. We have them on our website. You're most familiar with the wheelchair access symbol that we all see, but there's access symbols for open captioning and large print and audio description and braille. Every service, for the most part, has an access symbol. And what's nice about those, if those are on your website, if you use them in marketing materials, it lets individuals know that there's something there for them. When they see that symbol, they're going to investigate further. If they see it on your website, they might say, oh, that organization is familiar with open captioning. I think, I know a friend or a relative or myself that might benefit from open captioning. I'm going to call and inquire further. So the symbols are very, very helpful and something easy to do for you to promote what you're offering, but also promote what you're open to offering, right? And that's when that advanced notification policy is going to be helpful. Somebody could call and say, well, I see open captioning. You know what that is. I'm going to, I'd like to make a request or I'd like to inquire further about it. So these are some things that that moves you towards accessibility, but you could do these probably within a 6 to 8 month period. It gets you started, right? It's a good foundation. So the advisory boards, we talked about this for just a little bit, but they'll provide you guidance. They're great ambassadors for spreading the word about your organization and your programming to their colleagues within the disability community. Sometimes they might have some funding opportunities or know some funding resources that you could reach out to support your access work. They're great to assist you with training. They'll look at policies. If you're going to do something for, say, the hearing loss community, they might help you target market. And that's really important. If you're going to offer a service like open captioning or sign interpretation, you want to be able that you're doing some target marketing to communities that are going to specifically benefit from those services. So often, a lot of organizations, they offer a service and they just do some just general marketing. You know, they put it on a press release, they put it up on their website, and that's it. And then very few, if any, people ever come because you need to target market. You need to find out where are the folks that I'm looking to serve, where do they gather? What organizations are serving them? How do I get the word out to those groups to let them know about my organization, about my programming, and the fact that we're offering this service? So that's what target marketing is. And an advisory board can be very helpful that way. Again,
We have
I'm
another
going.
question.
Yep, good.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Can examples be provided of organizations that have been successful with forming and operating an advisory board? Also, are there examples of an advisory board at the community level that is shared across multiple organizations?
So I can tell you in Morris County, there's a couple of theaters there. There's a museum there. They had success in sharing an advisory board because they were all within like a 5 to 10 mile radius of each other. So versus everyone going after their own, they came together and developed an advisory board that they could all share. I know Paper Mill Playhouse, for example, has an advisory board. There's some individuals that represent different disabilities. So there's somebody from the hearing loss community, somebody who uses a wheelchair, somebody that services individuals that are on the spectrum. So they have various, either it's somebody with a disability or it's individuals that work for organizations that serve people with disabilities. Much like our Creating Change, or I'm sorry, our Cultural Access Network Committee, our steering committee represents a wide range. It represents some individuals with disabilities, with different forms of disability, but it also has some arts leaders that have great access programs, as well as individuals that provide services to the disability community. So it's a diverse group of individuals. So that gives you hopefully some guidance there. Okay. And then just in terms of your volunteers and managers, you know, if you're interviewing people, maybe for a volunteer position, you just always want to make sure you're interviewing people in an accessible location, that you'll take their information if you have some kind of a form or you need information from an individual, that you'll accept it in different formats. You know, sometimes the sheet or whatever somebody needs to fill out, that may not be appropriate for everyone. So you just want to make sure that if somebody has a different need in order to provide you the information, that you will accept that. And then just think about different job responsibilities. You know, there are some things like maybe with a volunteer where an individual, for example, could not lift boxes of a certain weight. Or if they were a wheelchair user, they may not be able to get around a particular area to, say, sort mail. Or so you want to think, okay, for these various positions, what are the absolute essential responsibilities, and what are some of the marginal responsibilities where this individual can do A, B, C, D, E really, really well, but you know, F and G, it's kind of marginal. We're going to give that responsibility to somebody else. So just when you're thinking about your various jobs, just think about what are the essential functions for those jobs and what are sort of the more marginal functions. And Diane and Kat, before we leave that, any thoughts here?
But I think the thing to just remember is it's not just the employment to get somebody in the door, but the responsibility of the organization continues once you've decided to engage that person, either as an employee or a volunteer that you want to make sure that the discussion about accommodations or other needs continues and that it doesn't stop.
Great point. Yep. And then just in terms, we're going to talk a little bit about some programming and services, just keeping in mind, as we said earlier, that disability is personal. Just because one has a particular disability and somebody there could be two individuals with a disability doesn't mean that they're exactly the same. It's personal. If somebody makes a request, don't ever say no. Just say, you know what, we're going to look into it. We're going to try. Many times, if somebody with a disability makes a request to engage in your program, they're going to work with you to make it happen. In my experience, that has happened 99% of the time. They'll call, they'll want to participate, they request an accommodation, and they actually have ideas, on how to make it happen. So you want to work together with the individual making the request. And then what might be helpful is when somebody orders, some people might call your organization and say, I'd like to make a reservation for this upcoming program that you're offering. You can take down their information, and then you could just ask them, is there something when you come to visit us, is there something that we could do that would make your experience at our venue more successful, more accommodating? Because many times an individual that has a request, an accommodation request, they may or may not feel comfortable making it on their own. So by you asking them and being proactive is, thank you so much for your reservation. We look forward to seeing you. Is there something that we can do to make your visit with us more accommodating? You are now giving that person permission to make a request if they need one. A lot of individuals feel awkward in making, they don't want to be the only one. They don't want to put people out, whatever it might be. But you, by being proactive with that question, you're giving them permission to make a request if they have one. It's just great customer service, right? To do that for folks. So many of you are probably familiar with a lot of these program offerings. Certainly if you're doing a theater performance, a lecture, and individuals who are deaf want to attend, they would need American Sign Language. That's the language that they communicate in. They would maybe deal with open captioning, but if they communicate through American Sign Language, they much prefer to have a sign language interpreter there. So that's important. And also individuals who are deaf do not consider themselves somebody with a disability. That's a cultural difference. So that's also important when you're marketing and communicating with the deaf community, that you don't put them under that large banner of disability. They view it's a cultural difference, right? Open captioning. So that's, again, if you have a theater performance, a lecture, poetry reading, this is very, very helpful for those with hearing loss. They may not benefit fully from a listening enhancement device, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, that amplifies the sound coming from the stage, whether it's an actor, a singer, a lecturer, but sometimes not everybody benefits from that. So the captioning is very important. And a lot of people love captioning, whether they identify as somebody with hearing loss or not, right? I don't know about you, but I have it on my television set for all those British shows where I can't understand a lot of what they're saying because of the heavy accent. The closed captioning on my television is very helpful. In the theater, a theater performance, a lecture, that open captioning is helpful for everyone, but especially for those with hearing loss. And then, Kat, you want to talk a little bit about audio description?
Yes, so audio description, if you're not familiar with it, it's available for things like theater, TV shows, movies, all sorts of things, and it just often features someone who is talking about, if it's theater, they're talking about what is going on stage, and you use the audio description, the device. Someone will get that and they'll just put that in their ear, and they can hear somebody who's blind or low vision would be able to hear somebody describe things that are going on, in the show. For instance, actors' movements across the stage, or maybe what a set piece looks like, things of that nature. If you've never experienced audio description, most streaming services have it nowadays. HBO Max has its own little uh, tab that you can kind of click on. I know Hulu has it, Peacock, and you can just listen to an example of audio description for like a TV series, show, whatever you want, just to kind of get an idea of that. Yeah. Oh, and we offer an audio description class every spring. Where people can get kind of a little intro to audio description that are planning to move on and become audio describers for your organization or other organizations. And so we'll usually announce that kind of in the winter time, and signups usually happen in January for that.
Mm-hmm. And you can do audio description even for visual arts, museums, where they describe pieces of art. I know that the Ellis Island has audio description there that describes the various artifacts at Ellis Island. So it can be utilized for theater, but it also can be utilized for performance, dance, as well as any of the visual arts as well. And then also thinking you can do something where there's sensory seminars, where in the theater, before the show begins, those with vision loss are feeling props and costumes that enhances their experience. By feeling those props and costumes, they're getting a sense of the time period of the piece. They're getting a sense of the character, perhaps, if they're feeling costumes. And museums have been doing this for years, where you can feel sculpture, raised line drawings. So that's another way of engaging those with vision loss. Grounds for Sculpture does a wonderful job in terms of describing their sculptures, but also providing a tactile experience for their blind, low vision patrons. And then many arts. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just there was something that I always think of when we talk about audio description is I had somebody that's part of the blind, low vision community one time say, I think it might have been one of our audio description classes, but they said that for them, audio description, when they go to see like a play or they go to a museum or something, like imagine that you have a coloring book and none of it's colored in, and that's what they have. But then when you add the audio description, it's like you've gone in and colored that whole thing. You've made it this beautiful thing that they know what's going on and what's happening, and something really for them to experience. So I just thought
I love that.
really great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then many of our organizations over the past, I would say maybe 8 to 10 years, there's been a lot of work being done for those with developmental disabilities, those on the spectrum. We've done a couple of roundtables in terms of how to reach that community. So those are other things to give some thought to. That's a little bit more involved. You definitely want to engage. Definitely have some folks guide you on how to make your programs accessible to those with developmental disabilities. And again, we can assist you if that's something you want to learn more about. We can help you there. But as Kat mentioned, we have done some roundtables on this topic, and those are archived on our website.
John,
Yeah.
can you go back to that?
Oh yeah.
I just wanted the programs for those on the spectrum, some things that might be triggers for people with cognitive disabilities may be no lighting in the audience. It may be loud volumes or sudden explosions in the performance. It might be other things that might trigger, for example, seizures. So it's to think about that it's not just for those on the spectrum, but it's looking at elements of the performance that might be adverse for somebody who has other kinds of disabilities, not just being on the spectrum.
That is really important, which is why sometimes you might, when you go to a performance, there might be signage that lets folks know that gunshots might be, some loud noise might be there, or they might use strobe lights for some reason. So that's a really, really good point. It could be something that could be something one needs to think about, not just for those on the spectrum, but some things could be impact the experience for a wide range of people, not just those on the spectrum. That's a really good point.
Isaac also brought up using trigger warnings for things like depictions of violence and abuse.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. The more information you provide your patrons, always the better, right? Okay. So we'll go through this really quickly. Many years ago, we did focus groups. We just spoke to individuals with disabilities who are interested in culture, but where were some of their barriers? And we always bring this slide up because it's still important to share what those key findings were, that they did not participate as much because every time they went to a cultural organization's website, there just seemed to be inaccurate information. Or they got inaccurate information when they called somebody on the phone. Not everybody at the organization knew about access or knew about the programming and access accommodations that their organization would offer. People are a little apprehensive about attending a venue for the first time, especially if you have a disability. So again, not always getting the right information when you call. So that provided some apprehension about going. Any information on an organization's access, what they offer, it was always buried in the marketing material, or it was 5 or 6 clicks on a website. They had a very hard time finding any access information. Again, when they called or spoke to anybody on the staff, the staff was not always fully aware of access programs and features of the organization. Of course, transportation, as we know, is a challenge in our state. So just for all of us to be aware of that and to be clear when we want to assist anybody coming to our organization, how can we assist them knowing transportation is a challenge? So any guidance, support, information you can provide people so that they can get to your organization as easy as possible, that's always really helpful. And of course, they would always love to know, is there one-stop shopping where I can just find out what accessible programs are being offered around the state? And Kat, you could let folks know about our access calendar.
Oh yeah, we have a lovely access calendar also on our website. And if you have an accessible event that you would like to get out to the public, you can sign up on our website. I can put the link below you, but you can sign up on our website to get an ID and a password for that. All those all come to me, and then I get you all set up, and then you can go and post your event, and you can put what sort of access service you are providing. So if it's a sensory friendly performance, if you're going to have sign language, if it's going to be open captioned, you can put all of that on your event, and then it gets posted to our page and people can check there. And we actually had, really good feedback. Like, people are using our website, every once in a while we have little updates on all the data and metrics, and I don't have all the percentages and things memorized, but it is a high percentage of people that are coming and viewing this and finding, using these to access organization information. Mhm.
Right. And then just you want to get the word out, and also always give yourself plenty of time to spread the word about anything, any access service you're going to provide, information about the features of your building or the buildings in which you might be performing or offering any kind of arts and culture program. Make sure that your brochures are in different formats. So a lot of folks want things online today, so always keep that in mind. Some people may want materials in large print. So you just want to be open to making sure that you have information that you can offer in different formats. You want to utilize those access symbols that we talked about earlier. That first person language, just be, again, conscious of language when you're marketing and promoting your organization and your services. Your advisory board can really help spread the word about your organization and what you're offering. Include that advanced notification policy in your press releases, on your website. That's really essential. Look at your website. Is the print on your website large enough? Is there contrast, scalable type? These are some just basic things that help to make your website accessible. If you can, engage the community, reach out to organizations that serve people with disabilities. Let them get to know who you are, what programming you offer. That's going to start to build that target marketing that we talked about. If any of them offer any kind of gathering, meetings or a conference, maybe you could see if you could speak at one of these gatherings. So really know what's going on in your county, where various organizations are gathering, and try to engage and network with those communities. And then just take a look at your website, the features. Is that accessibility statement that we talked about up there? Is there a list of the various accessible programs and services? If you're a theater, is there a seating diagram that shows where the wheelchair locations are? Any ticketing policy you want to put up there? Again, you're making sure those access symbols are on your website. And if somebody has a question about accessibility or wants to ask about an accommodation, who should they call? Just make it as specific as possible. If you can't have a person's name, then have a direct extension or a direct email, something that's easy for people to find. You want to make sure that so that the individual can get back to the patron with an answer to their request. So just make sure that it's the right person with the most specific contact information that you can provide. Diane, as it relates to the website, any thoughts that help you?
Even if you don't have a name, I would just encourage have both a phone number and an email, because phone calls work for some people, emails work for others. But I think that you can cover a large portion of your potential patrons if you have both of those. And the seating diagram, I think, is really important because people want to know what their options are, and the ticketing policy. And I know that as I'm looking for wheelchair seating, I've run into organizations where they're good about requiring that you're buying a wheelchair seat if you're buying companion seat, but some aren't quite so good, and then the companion seats are all sold out, and I'm looking for, and there's a space for me, but I'm looking for a place for my husband. And so it's important to look at how you're dealing with sales if you've got a section that's best for open captioning, or if your ASL interpreter. Is there a way that somebody can find that information on your website? The more that you can let a person do on their own without having to make calls, it's easier on you, it's easier on them.
And make sure you organize things on the website so it's just a couple of clicks. It's kind of, patron friendly, as, going back to those key findings of those focus groups. That was a big frustration with a lot of folks, that they go to so many organizations' websites and it's really hard to find the information. It's buried and it's like 4 or 5 or more clicks. So you really, and when you set up your website, it might be good just to have somebody go through it with you, assess the website with you, have somebody who's blind, low vision go through the website and provide you some feedback. That's really important to do that.
Because a lot of times people like to be able to go on websites and be able to find the information, and if they can't, if they're having to click all over your website and look for stuff, at that point they're going to be so frustrated they're not necessarily going to want to even make a phone call. They're just not going to come to whatever the event is. And
Right.
people with disabilities, they have friends. We have lots of friends, big social circles. We bring, word of mouth and everything is really big. So word gets around. Just make everything really easy to find. It's not that hard to kind of, put it on your website. So.
So there's, we'll go through this quickly. There's several website resources here, so you can go through those. And we did provide this PowerPoint, so you should be able to get all of this information, so you have it. All right, we'll go to the next. And then, of course, just giving some thought to the building, the venues, your offices, where you present art and cultural programming. Making sure about the wheelchair seating, as Diane mentioned, the importance of companion seating. What's your policy when people come in with walkers? Do you have a policy on the removal of the walker? How are you communicating where you're putting the walker to the patron? How about your restrooms? What about the routes, as once you're inside the building and getting into not only inside the building, but getting into the building? Are there any barriers? So these are the things that are really important for you to assess and really know the features of your building and also the features of the buildings where you're presenting art and cultural programming. If somebody was to make a complaint, they would name both the venue as well as the program provider. So if you're providing programming, but you don't own the venue, you are still going to be named in a complaint if somebody makes a complaint. Plus, you just want to make sure that you're working with venues that also have a commitment to accessibility and really understand those accessible features. And there's a whole list of things here. And we won't go through every one, but these are important things to look at when you're assessing your own building or any building where you're doing programming. And Diane, just wanted to, as you, just any tips you have when organizations are assessing facilities?
Um, Very often an organization has wheelchairs that they might provide for patrons who can get to their venue, get out of their car, but need a wheelchair to get around. Why don't you borrow that wheelchair and walk through the facility with the wheelchair and see your own experience trying to get around? Can you get to your seat? Do you see proper signage? If the path is different for someone who can or cannot climb stairs, can you get to the bathroom? Can you get in the bathroom? Can you close the door in the bathroom? I won't tell you all my stories about that. And just look at, as I mentioned before, if there's a location for captioning or ASL interpreters, can you get to those easily? But if you walk through the venue yourself, whether it's your own or somebody else's, you'll see a lot by looking yourself, maybe with this list in your hand.
And when you go through your venue, try to see if you can identify somebody who uses a scooter, a wheelchair user. They're going to find barriers, probably that you might not think about. It could be something very small, but yet a barrier nonetheless to someone. So try to do the facility assessment with somebody else. Importantly, somebody who's a wheelchair user, a scooter, and your county office that I talked about earlier, they're very good about identifying somebody that could come to your venue and do a walkthrough with you. So just something to keep in mind. So we'll go because we're at 1:30. So just think about planning. You want to think about, we went through these various sections today, things about around policy, around programming and marketing and facility. You could take each one of these and say, okay, for the next 2 or 3 months, we're going to work on a plan around policy or programming. Is our overall goal? What are some of the action steps over the next couple of years that we want to take on? Who's going to be working on that? Do we require any financial resources? And again, do this not by yourself. Do this in collaboration with other folks at your organization, but it gives you some sort of a roadmap because, as we said, access is not overnight, it's a journey, and you just need to set up some steps to keep moving your commitment around accessibility forward. And then we have some slides here on emergency preparedness. So we won't go through all of this, but it's just very important. If there ever was an emergency, you need to think about how do we prepare ourselves and think about all of your patrons, right? All your visitors, and especially think about those with disabilities. Because more than likely, you're going to have to rethink some things a little differently to ensure that your patrons with disabilities that you're prepared to support them in the event of any kind of an emergency. So there's some good resources here in this presentation that you can certainly reach out, investigate further, that can provide you some guidance here. But a lot of people have these emergency preparedness plans, if there was a fire, if you needed to evacuate the building for whatever reason. But please give thought to if there are individuals with disabilities in the building, what steps you need to accommodate them in the event of an emergency. So these
And
should
that
be
could
all
be,
helpful.
and that could be things like if patrons are coming in with a walker and, those walkers are stored somewhere else, how are those walkers getting back to people in the event of an emergency?
Right.
Mhm.
Which you should definitely think about that anyway. That's a big, people who have walkers want to know, how am I getting my walker back? Who's going to bring it back? So this is our website, lots of great resources. We talked about our roundtables that are archived here. You can find everything here. So go through that and refer to it periodically because we do update it with various resources and education opportunities. So refer to it often. And then this is a bunch of resources here. So you could go through many, many resources. So you can familiarize, go through them and familiarize yourself with them. And then if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us. If we don't know the answer, we have an incredible steering committee, as I mentioned, of the Cultural Access Network. My guess is we'll always be able to find the answer if we ourselves don't know it. So never hesitate to reach out. Join us for our roundtables. As Kat mentioned, they start up again in December. If you have a topic, something you really would love us to consider, always drop a line to Kat, and we'll certainly consider it as we put together the curriculum for those roundtables. So I know we went a few minutes over, lots of information to share. So Kat, if you want to unshare so we can just see everyone. And just wanted to, before we go, any last minute thoughts, questions anyone has?
Hi, John. I was
Yes, hi.
doing a lot of questions in chat, but I'm actually a person, so happy to ask one this way too. So, I really appreciated the example from Morris County, where they're doing some coordination at the county level. Given that this is a Mercer County call, can you give any insights on maybe some organizations that are doing a really good job in Mercer County? And I'm really thinking about for our organization, while we have 1,000 members, that realistically, amongst my volunteers, of which there's about 50, a core group of about 17, that we probably can't create our own dedicated accessibility task. I'm sorry, what was the term you used? Accessibility.
Oh, the advisory
Advisory.
board. Yeah.
Advisory board, right? So we don't even have an advisory board for the organization. So, but if we partnered with a couple of organizations in the county, that I think that would be an effective way to achieve this. So I think that
Yeah.
was a question. Does that trigger anything for you?
Yeah, you could reach out to Steve Runk. He's
Okay.
over at the Lewis Center over at Princeton.
Great.
There was a county, I haven't heard anything recently. Mercer, they did have this kind of large cultural
They
support,
did,
and I
John.
don't know if it's still in existence.
I don't believe it is.
Oh,
It
okay.
was called Praba,
Oh, that's right. That's right.
PRABA, for, I think, arts and business
That's
advisory. But I think that with COVID, they
oh,
ended up closing down, and I don't know what has restarted, if there's anything.
yeah.
That was at the county level. I'll
Right.
give you my own perspective on Prob, having been to some of their meetings. I think they were too big.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you can find, let's say, 3 or 4 organizations, McCarter used to be very good here, but also they've gotten hit since the pandemic, and I don't know if they've restarted their advisory board.
Yeah,
But
I
I
don't
think,
think they have. Mm-mm.
um, but I think that John's suggestion is Steve Runk,
Yeah, I'm going to give you his email now.
and I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and we
So,
actually partner and work with McCarter in addition to a number of the other organizations in Princeton.
mhm.
So I think it's a great suggestion, and I'm more than happy to pursue those conversations
Yeah.
offline. And thank you, by
Okay.
the way, Diane, both for sharing your personal account today. Actually, Diane and Kat, which I appreciated a great deal. And this was one of the best presentations I've heard on the topic. You know,
Oh,
honestly, a lot of times when I filled out my grants, I've just kind of scratched my head. I've looked at the websites trying to figure it out, but the way that you've assembled the information and presented it has changed how I view this accessibility issue now and moving forward. So thank you.
Isaac,
you're welcome.
what organization are you?
Oh, sorry. I know it's not self-evident. Experience Princeton. We work for over 1,000 businesses and property owners, and our grants primarily have been around promotions for the 250th anniversary of the U.S.
Hmm,
But we haven't quite figured out what our next grant's going to be. We have a little bit of time to do that.
great.
And
So do you
Diane, I'm a neighbor in Metuchen, by the way, so just giving a shout out there.
have,
Okay.
Isaac, do you have Steve Runk's contact information or
I'd
no?
appreciate it.
I just
Oh,
And
sent it in
I'll
the,
give it to you. It's very, very simple.
I
It's
just, pri- oh, sorry, I just private messaged it to Isaac in the chat.
oh,
awesome.
you
I'll
did.
get it.
Okay, perfect. You're
But
a
I,
step
I
ahead
will
of me.
commit to following up. So thank you, everyone.
Sure. Any other last minute thoughts, questions? Lisa, anything you want to share before we go?
Chelsea and I are here. We thank you
Hi.
all for attending. And I'm glad that it was a good session for everyone and you all took something away with it, I hope. So if you have any questions, you could feel free to, email us or as well as John or Kat and Diane. So we can, keep moving forward and keep everybody, on the latest topics.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Wait.